For the founders in the space with style and grace, I'm Brittany Antoinette, host of the Not So CEO talk show and founder of The Idea Girl. From work and wellness to bootstrapping and burnout, we cover all bases on building a brand, whether you're a seasoned vet or you're just getting started. Through guest interviews, water cooler combos, and office hours, we're paving way for a new era of Not So CEOs. So grab a notepad and tune in for unfiltered banter on branding, business, and bullshit. Lotus La Loba is a distinguished trauma-informed practitioner, energy healer, and acclaimed speaker born and raised in New York City. With over a decade of expertise in curating events, teaching classes, and leading corporate wellness sessions, Lotus is committed to empowering creatives to unlock their fullest potential and express themselves authentically. Driven by personal encounters with chronic diseases and mental health challenges, Lotus advocates for the importance of cultivating a sense of safety within our bodies and minds. As an Afro-Latina millennial woman, she transforms her own healing journey into a narrative of deep pleasure and triumph in life, guiding others, especially Black women, back to the feminine divine to experience beauty within and around them. Lotus's impact extends beyond individual healing to building global communities through her podcast, Lotus Like, which explores mental and spiritual wellness through the ancestral power of storytelling. As an award-winning speaker and teacher, she shares her wisdom and experiences to underscore the transformative power of resilience and self-care. Certified in various modalities, including NLP, EFT, TFT, quantum Reiki, and hypnotherapy, Lotus empowers Black creatives through energy work, meditation, and emotional freedom technique. She hosts weekly EFT and meditation sessions on platforms like Insight Timer, reaching a global audience and providing tools for overcoming generational traumas and assessing inner strength. Through her advocacy and work, Lotus La Loba embodies resilience, authenticity, and the transformative power of community. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Not So CEO talk show. Lotus, thank you so much for being today's guest. And I'm super excited to talk about today's topic, which is pretty much how to manage your mental and emotional health through EFT tapping. So if you don't know what EFT tapping is, you're going to find out what it is today. But most importantly, I'm here with Lotus, one of my good up girlfriends. And I'm so honored to have you on the Not So CEO talk show. Well, for one, this is not our first attempt at recording this. So everything happens, for the right time, right reason, right season, right rhyme or reason, per. And Lotus is back again with me to take us through this journey. Lotus, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling amazing just because it's you and we just always have such a good synergy when we're together. So I know it's going to be an amazing episode. Like, I know you and me.
Mackie, da, da.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
It's going to be such a good time. For one, I always like to start off the episodes typically with how we met. So
Mm,
I met Lotus, I want to say it was either back in 2018 or 2019. So that was when I had, before there was Not So CEO, there was something called the Idea Girl Gang.
yes.
And it was like a community, it had a membership, we threw events. I remember I was looking for event volunteers, and Lotus was like, me, I signed up as tribute. And
Yes.
since then, we've been able to cultivate a beautiful, flourishing relationship since then. So I'm super honored to be able to call you not only just a peer colleague, but also a friend.
Goodness, Brittany, it's just too early for me to be tearing up. Like, please.
Not with the waterworks, girl. We got toughen up.
Fine. Well, you know I'm a water sign. You know how I
Got
get.
tighten the fuck up.
I'm ready.
I
I'm
love
ready.
you. Every other second, girl. I cry watching videos of baby kittens.
I know.
It's
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 those things.
that's the cancer side of me. That's the cancer side. But before we dive deep in today's topic, can you start off by sharing a bit about your background, a bit about maybe your childhood, your professional journey, your academic journey, and what led you to be where you are today?
Wow. Oh, I don't talk about my childhood often, so this is going to be refreshing for people.
I love
Um,
the fact that everyone says that on my talk show. Like, I don't talk about this topic. I'm like, well, you're going to talk about it today.
you always, I was telling you this the other day, you asked the absolute best questions. Like, I was preparing myself for like, where are we going with this? Because Brittany's going to ask you something that's going to be thought-provoking and you need to be ready. So, my childhood, I grew up in two separate homes. So, my mom was a single parent and she was very adamant about me getting like really good school education, making sure I was in a good district. So, she had me live out in Long Island with my grandparents. So I grew up there Monday through Friday, and on the weekends I was in New York City. So I had this like dual experience of like having my mom's place in Queens, right, and having like that city life, and then being in Long Island in a house with like a front yard, a backyard, walking to school, things like that. So I often reflect on how this dual experience has shaped how I am as an educator, as a practitioner today, being able to flow between both dynamics, whether that's like the city life and the suburban life or like light energy, dark energy, things like that. It's always been woven into my existence, even since childhood. One thing that I really loved about my childhood was how prominent the women were in my life. So it wasn't like traditional families where you go to the dad and ask permission. Like if dad says no, that's it. Like it was the women. It was like my grandmother, my mom, like my aunties. It was them. Like literally in awe, but also terrified at the same time because these women were so powerful and how they held our community together, the way that they contributed to each other's livelihoods. I grew up watching that type of sisterhood. So it's no surprise that that's something that is really important to me to have and why I have this deep love and admiration for my peers and my sisters because that's just what I know was in my blood at this point, being able to be around that was magnificent. I had my little sister, I didn't have my other sister. We grew up, it was amazing. I loved having her. At first I didn't, but I got used to it. Big sister problems, you're just kind of like I was here by myself and now things are happening. Um,
Same, same.
right? Yeah, like I love you. It's not that I don't, it's just I was really used to it was just being me. Like I was cool with that. One thing I remember about like my early childhood education was that I always won awards for being Miss Congeniality or Miss Social Butterfly. I was very adamant about people feeling safe and people feeling seen. Like if I saw someone not having a friend, I would go over there and be like, I'll be your friend. I was always into sharing. It should drive my mom
Um,
crazy because I would always give things away. I'm like, you don't have any crayons? I'll give you crayons. And my mom's like, girl, that costs money. Like, stop doing that. But I always just wanted people to feel safe around me. It was an innate behavior of like community, It was very important that if I was in the room, that no one felt left out. And I feel like I still carry that to this day. I think it's why I'm so passionate about the work that I do and making sure I provide safe spaces for Black women to be safe within themselves and safe within their energy systems. So that's like early childhood. And then, I grew up, had amazing experiences in my teenagehood that felt very traumatizing, going through high school and like hormones happening, changing your point of view, then, dating and people not liking you for different
oh
reasons.
my
And
God, you could not pay me
I
to
would
do
never go
junior
back.
high school and high school over again. You
Thank you.
couldn't pay me $1 million
No, I'm
to do
okay.
it over again. Maybe 20.
Like, right? The number needs to go up.
Yeah. The nose,
Oh,
yeah. Traumatic times, traumatic
no,
times.
it was really traumatic for me, especially because I had grown up in Long Island for my education, right? And then my grandparents ended up moving down south when I turned 14. So I had to go to high school in the city. So it was very jarring for me because I had no friends, right? I was starting off in a whole new environment and having to navigate that. And I was like the weird girl. I was the girl that came in like bell bottoms and like hug a tree t-shirts. And I would like talk about nature and all these things. And everybody was like, girl, what it did for me that inspired me to want to create community. So at a young age, I think I was like 17 or 18, me and my friend at the time created a nonprofit called Extraordinary, but then we changed it to Pretty Full. And it was a space to help young women transitioning into high school to have like a big sister mentor. Because I was reflecting on my experience and I'm like, I would have loved to have like someone show me the ropes instead of me trying to figure this out myself because it just would have been nice to have. So we started doing that. We did it for a few years, and then that evolved into doing it for people leaving high school going into college. And then I was able to do a partnership with Harlem Children's Zone, and I was a college liaison. And again, I kept going into that bag of being into mentorship and making sure that young Black and brown people felt safe as they were transitioning into a new space. And as I'm saying this now, I realize that most of my clients are always in the space of transition, but that makes a lot of sense now that I'm saying it out loud. Um, it was amazing. I loved being in that space and being able to, I love the idea of holding someone's hand through an experience, you know? Mainly because for a lot of things I had to experience in my life, I didn't have my hand held. I had to do it myself. And knowing that I can ease someone else's journey, or someone else's dark night of the soul, it's always going to make me feel alive, feel like I'm doing what I need to do here on earth.
And it seems as if it was already ordained for you, leadership, by you going to a leadership high school. If your grandparents never moved down south, you probably would have never created that nonprofit. Right. So everything happens for a reason. So I know from your personal journey that you've had a few struggles with your physical and your mental health, which
Yeah.
ultimately helped shape and inspired your path and your trajectory into being a healer, a teacher, a leader, a mentor.
Having those issues really early on in my life changed everything for me. So prior to being diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, and then having the bipolar 2 diagnosis in like my mid-20s, I was all about hustle grind, team no sleep. Like I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality, very unhealthy, super toxic. Um, my life motto was that no one cares, work harder. Like that's literally what I would tell myself. And I was winning all these awards and these achievements. I was breaking all these boundaries and my body was deteriorating. I would like be having speeches and I'm like at 102-degree fever, right? Or my body's inflamed and we have no idea what's going on. And I was diagnosed with lupus. Well, I started the journey of diagnosis with lupus at 19. And then at 20, they found the marker for rheumatoid arthritis. And I was in and out of the hospital pretty much every week doing blood work, trying to figure out exactly what was going on, what medications I need to take. And I was doing that while a full-time student in college at the time. I was working two jobs on top of doing mentorship in the school. And then I was also student government president. So I was running 76 clubs and a budget of like 2.5 million at the time, like as a 19, 20-year-old, which was wild. And I kept ignoring my health. I kept ignoring my health over and over and over again. And it wasn't until I was in my late, I think I was like turning 21, and I ended up having a mild stroke in City Hall Park. I was talking to my fiance at the time, we're chit-chatting, and all of a sudden my face just starts to like go numb and I'm drooling and I'm like, what's happening? And someone sees it, starts calling people over, and the next thing you know, when I'm in the ER, they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it was in that moment that I was like, girl, what are we gonna do? Because clearly your lifestyle is not helping, right? On top of that, I was living at home. And at that time, my mother and I had a really volatile relationship. So I wasn't getting any peace at home. And then when I was at school, like doing presidential things, running around to classes, mentoring my mentees. And there was really no time for me at all whatsoever. And I didn't prioritize that. You know, again, kind of going back to my childhood, seeing the women in my life, they just were super women, right? They just did all these amazing things. So I'm like, if they were doing it with less resources, who am I to complain and, you know, think about my health in that way, right? Which reflecting on it now is like such an insane way to think, but I was conditioned that way. It wasn't until those diagnoses that I had to decide what I was going to do because the life that I was living was going to kill me. Quite simple. So, was I going to change my lifestyle or was I going to run myself into the ground? And I started to change things like my diet, you know, adding in more yoga because I was studying yoga and these things, but it was more for like my intellectual satisfaction, not really for the principles of how it can provide healing and wellness into your life.
Mm-hmm.
I was just because I was fascinated by it. But I started to look at the practices differently, like what is it actually doing for my body? What is it doing for my mental well-being, right? And then fast forward to 23, 24. I was shifting out of being unhoused, and I was living in a new part of New York City. That environment was really unhealthy, just not great. And I had a nervous breakdown. I completely collapsed. Like my spirit was exhausted, my mind and my body was exhausted. And I had an attempt on my life and I was hospitalized. And that's when I found out about the diagnosis for bipolar 2 disorder. And I was in intensive therapy for about 3 months. I was going to therapy literally the entire day because I was on campus. I was hospitalized. So I had cognitive behavioral therapy, group therapy, art therapy, one-on-one. I had a psychiatrist on top of that because they were trying to figure out what was going on. I just didn't care. Like I felt hopeless. Like what was the point? I'm so tired. I can't complete anything. Um, it just felt like there was no purpose in my life, which was so jarring for me because I've always had purpose in my life. I'm really lucky enough to have known what I was supposed to be doing all this time. Like I knew it was supposed to be community. I knew I was supposed to be teaching. I would be told this by so many people, but I always knew in my spirit. And then there was a time when there was a disconnect and I just felt cut off from source. And in that experience, I started learning about these different healing modalities and different therapies. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I thought it was just talk therapy. You know, you go to a therapist, you talk about your problems, and you hopefully get through it.
Mhm.
And then I was seeing different practitioners come into the hospital and teach us new ways to like be in our body. And that was the first time I ever heard that concept of like being in your body, not being in your head. Right. And when I started doing the practices, it became easier for me to feel centered. I started to feel that sense of purpose again. And I was like, I want to teach this to other people because I can't be the only person that feels like this. And I started sharing my journey like on Instagram, on Facebook. I created my podcast to do that, just talking about my mental health journey. One, to practice destigmatizing mental health in Black communities, because I remember when I got my diagnosis, the first thing the adults in my life said were like, don't tell anybody. Because the minute you tell someone you have bipolar 2 disorder, they're never going to look at you the same at all. Don't like hide this truth about yourself. And I've always had this rebellious nature to go against the grain. I was like, no, I'm going to tell. I'm going to say that's the truth. That's what I'm going through. For me to hide that is for me to hide a part of myself. And I'm trying to heal. I can't heal something if it's hidden, right? And in me doing
Jay-Z
that,
said you can't heal what you don't reveal.
he ain't lying, okay? That was all facts. And I ended up getting my mental health certification through New York State to be a mental health aide. And I did that more for me, of like, you know what it feels like to be in your head, right? And to have all these things going on. What can you do to soothe that? And having that training was like my first training I did in this wellness field. And it was so eye-opening for me of like, wow, this is how the brain works, right? This is how the body works. And that evolved into me getting my EFT certification, my Reiki certification, neurolinguistics programming, hypnotherapy, because I started to realize that the more I know about myself and how I work, the easier it is for me to show up in spaces and feel safe and feel okay and feel like I want to see tomorrow, right? So overall, those diagnoses, they saved my life. I realize now, especially on a spiritual level, that they were invitations from source of like, you're not taking care of your body. And when we're not taking care of our body will communicate to us in pain, because that's the only time that we slow down and pay attention. When we feel really good in our bodies, we're not even thinking about our bodies. We're thinking about like what we can do with this energy, where we can go. It's only when we are in pain, like, oh, I feel my back. Like now you're in your body again. Now your body's talking to you and communicating to you and saying, hey, babes, we don't like this experience, or this doesn't feel good to us. So let's pause and stop. But that took me time to realize that's what was happening in that time frame.
Now, you have certifications in modalities like NLP, EFT, TFT, quantum Reiki, and hypnotherapy. How do these certifications complement each other in your current practice now?
I love each and every certification that I have because again, you start to realize how these different modalities, when they're woven together, they create this holistic, like whole, like the whole body is considered in your practice. So from Reiki, understanding how energy works, how we're taking in things from our aura, to NLP, how the brain functions in certain ways. You can use your body to even program different feelings in the body, right? That was super fascinating to me. Hypnotherapy is where I really learned how to use the power of my voice to change the tone. If I want a meditation to go a little deeper, if I want a certain topic to be talked about where it's not as triggering, it allowed me to use my body as an instrument, as a tool, and as a vessel to continue sharing the information that I was learning and that I was receiving from source. And EFT, that's my baby. I mean, I don't have favorites, but that's my favorite. You know what I mean? Like EFT is something that I want the entire world to know about and to learn about, especially Black and Brown people, Black and Brown creatives, because I find that it is one of the simplest ways for you to practice regulating your nervous system, for you to have that mind-body connection, so you can fully inhabit it, all the gifts and talents that live within you. EFT allows us to make that happen.
Now, before we dive into EFT, I want to ask, what inspired you to focus on empowering creatives, particularly Black women and Brown women, to unlock their fullest potential and express themselves authentically?
Honestly, living life really inspired me. Also, just having, again, incredible sisterhood. I'm always inspired by my friends. I tell you, I call you almost like every day. I'm telling you, Brittany, I'm inspired by your work, or I'm
He does.
over
One
you.
thing Lotus is going to do, she's going to support you.
Because I'm just always just like, wow, these incredible beings are, I get to communicate with you, you know? And since I can remember, I've always been in awe when you see someone in their passion, like when you see someone expressing their genius, no matter what it is. It could be a topic that I personally don't care about, but when you see someone that is so excited about sharing it, I could just be like, I'm there all day. Like, tell me everything. There's something about seeing someone fully wake up in their body, in their energy to share something that moves them, that I'm really appreciative of. And for me, it's like if I get to help you tap into that energy more often, more frequently, I mean, that's amazing. It's beneficial for the entire world, because when creatives get to share their gifts, get to share their talents, and they're able to do it in a sustainable way, right? Where they're not feeling burnt out, where they can endure, where they can build up a sense of resiliency. In my mind, it's like it just makes sense to hold space for them, because that's how we're going to move the world forward. That's how we're going to change the experiences and the environments and the perspectives that are harming us. It's the creatives. That's what's leading the world forward.
Now, you have pretty much learned all of these different modalities. When it comes to your physical ailments and your diagnosis, how were you able to utilize your teachings in order to heal yourself?
Yes. Oh, man. Such a good question, Brittany. Okay. So first and foremost, it was meditation and EFT. So I've been meditating for a long time, but once I got my certification to teach meditation, and I started practicing it every day and creating meditations and scripts and things like that, I kind of set my life up in a way where my work helps me with my wellness. I can't avoid it. So I know some people talk about how when they're doing their work, they don't feel like it's for them. Like, my work is for me. It's a deeply personal act before it's professional.
Mhm.
And I've really set that intention, especially in this year, to make sure that the work I do is personal for me. So the meditations that I create, the EFT experience that I create, I'm in there with you tapping as I'm doing this. It's not me in teacher mode. It's me as a person knowing that this healing modality works. And I also know the power of community, that when we're doing this together, it elevates everyone in the space, right? So my work is woven into my day. I meditate every day. I'm tapping every day. I do hypnotherapy every day. I use these certifications every single day in my life to keep my nervous system regulated, to keep me present in my mind and my body, so that I can first and foremost enjoy my life, right? And like benefit from these things that I've learned, but also so that I can be a safe space for other people.
Now, you also host weekly EFT and meditation sessions on platforms like Insight Timer, which I am a subscriber of. What benefits have you observed in participants who regularly attend your sessions?
Oh my goodness. First off, shout out the collective. I love them so much. They name themselves. I love them. People from all over the world have come together to practice EFT with me, which is just, even as I'm saying it now, I'm just like, that's so wild. It's still a very surreal experience. But I've had so many success stories from people finally getting out of a space of trauma where they can like get their own homes, people being able to manage like deep grief that they were drowning in at one point and they were able to use EFT to regulate themselves. I have parents that tell me they practice EFT with their kids and now their kids are
Wow.
able to really, own their emotions and express themselves better. I mean, across the world, like different ages, different races, different places, different spaces, everyone has been benefiting from EFT. I really appreciate Insight Timer for even giving me that type of access to be able to reach those people. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing to see people come into the space and you do like a wellness check and you're like, I kind of feel really sad today, or, this has been a really hard week. And then by the end, they're like, Lotus, I feel light. I feel good. Like, thank you. That transformation happening in such a short amount of time really speaks to the practice of EFT, but also I guess to me as a facilitator as well, being able to keep that container for them to explore what they're going through. Like my goal, I would love for life to be easier for all of my students, all of my audience. I want you guys to have an easeful life. But I also know that in order to have a regulated nervous system, you need to ebb and you need to flow. Both are necessary, right? The highs are as important as the lows. So you have an appreciation for it. Being able to create a space every week where people can experience both, just really amazing.
I think the act of serving or the act of servicing is one of the most rewarding feelings, especially when it's in alignment with something you love to do, something that you're gifted and talented at. There is no better feeling than knowing that something that you shared has potentially or can potentially change somebody's life. Now, I'm pretty sure there's people listening in, our NASA CEOs that are tuning in right now that are like, what the hell is EFT? And why do they keep talking like, I know what it is? For those that are unfamiliar with EFT, can you explain what it is, which is emotional freedom technique, and how it works?
Yeah. So like Brittany said, EFT is an acronym for emotional freedom technique or techniques because there's several different techniques. I teach a universal flow that anyone can use at any time, but EFT can get really specific to whatever trauma it is that we're addressing and that we're holding space for. I don't teach a specialized part publicly like that because you need a practitioner for that. Like that's where we're diving in deep and I need you to be with a professional. But for like general topics, yeah. Essentially what you're doing is you're tapping on these ancient acupressure points on the body, and as you're tapping on them, you're communicating to your body that what we're talking about, the theme of this session, I either need it to come to the surface so that I can accept it, transmute it, let it go, or I want to integrate what I'm saying so that I can feel better, so that I can rewire my brain to support these new habits, right? And with EFT, the reason why I'm always just in love with it is because it actually helps you to rewire the brain, support new habits, to support new thought processes, right? In a way that is super simple. And then it also is allowing you to be in the body. And the body keeps score. I'm sure we all heard of that book, right?
Yes.
Where it talks about the fact that every single trauma you've had in your life is stored in your body. Every experience you've had is stored in your body. It's a lot of wisdom in your body. I was recently talking to someone and they had mentioned that the mind is conscious, but the body is the subconscious because it stores everything. And EFT connects the mind to the body. So you have a full body experience because that's what we're supposed to be having. A lot of people, when we're experiencing things like anxiousness or profound sadness, it usually means that our energetic pathways that run within us and around us, they're called meridians. Think of them as like energy highways. They're not connected. So there's gaps. So like in energy healing, it's not that there are creative blocks, there are creative gaps, there are energy gaps. And what we do when we're tapping, we connect those pathways back together, clear out that stagnant energy, and allow our energy to run the way it's supposed to, so that we can process the information that we're receiving without getting stuck in like flight, fight, freeze, or fawn mode.
The first time I've ever heard about EFT was through Ayala Van Zant's book,
Auntie Alanya.
21 Days of Forgiveness on How to Forgive Everyone for Everything. Once I got to the EFT part, I was so confused that I stopped reading the book. What is EFT? And I was so confused the way that they broke it down. However, Lotus actually does EFT meditations on Insight Timer. And there's one meditation that I listen to almost every day. If I don't listen to this one meditation, which is a gratitude meditation that you do, how to be grateful for everything. And when I mean I listen to, this is only 11 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't listen to Lotus's meditation, I listen to my breath. And that's about it. So it's like either or. And I actually love your self-love one.
Oh
I do that one from time to time, but the gratitude EFT, that
yeah.
is like every day because I believe in starting off your day with gratitude no
Grateful.
matter what. When you are so focused on and so grateful for what you already have, you
Mhm.
spend less time thinking about what you don't have or relishing in the lack that you see that you have. Like, and I believe that gratitude is, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the most highest vibratory forms of expression. And it's great for attracting abundance
It
because
is.
if you can be grateful for what you already have, all you're going to do is attract even more.
Yes, yes. Gratitude is up there with bliss, euphoria. It has such a beautiful frequency that, like Brittany said, you begin to attract more of what you appreciate, right? The more you can appreciate the things that you have in your life, the more that the universe is like, oh, okay, heard you. You want more of that. Got it. The same way that if you're focusing your energy on things that you don't like, you'll get more of that too, because the universe, like the brain, it doesn't know right from wrong. It's just like whatever you're feeling is what I'm going to go off of and give you more of that.
And it doesn't know the difference. And I say this all the time. Everyone should know this by now. And the brain cannot tell the difference between the past,
Mm-mm.
the future, and
Mhm.
the present,
Or reality and fantasy. It's the same thing to the brain. Yeah.
which basically means that you can create your own fantasy and live in it. Say, for example, someone pisses me off or someone does something to upset me.
Mhm.
I drift my mind from relishing in the emotion to what I actually do want to be experiencing. So I shift my mind into envisioning me walking past the Eiffel Tower. You know, I want to live in Paris. So I shift my mind to where I want to be. The girls call it being delusional. Being delulu to find the salulu. That's what they call it on TikTok, right? That's what the kids call it. But really and truly, it's just a form of manifestation that has a lot more neurological terms
Yeah.
rather than, saying manifestation. If you don't believe in the spiritual woo-woo terms, this
Yeah.
is actually proven
Yeah.
when it comes to the brain and psychology.
Yeah.
All of these are legit truths and more so have to do with memories and emotions and how we can actually use our emotions to supercharge our realities,
Yes.
which I think is a beautiful thing because EFT is new for a lot of different people. Can we maybe go over the different pressure points and the emotions that are related to each pressure point?
There are 9 points. Let me be very clear. There are over like 100 points that you can use for tapping because we're talking about the acupressure points that are throughout the body. So they're like points on our ankles, things like that. Most practitioners focus on these 9 points because it's easy to reach for people who have different senses of mobility. But it's also just easy to remember in that flow. And I also want to specify that if you are someone that um, is having like if you're differently able, you can also just think about tapping on these points and still have the same effects on the body. You don't actually have to tap to have the experience. But for the sake of showing you guys visually, so the 9 points are the side of hand, and that's between the pinky knuckle bone and the wrist bone, where like my tattoo is. Yes, you would lightly tap here, right? And this helps us to like filter out the energy. It literally is a filtering system. You're telling the body, hey, I'm getting ready to talk about something really heavy and I really want to make sure that I am grounded and I'm feeling safe, right? Depending on your practitioner and where it is that they learn their techniques, they're going to have different meanings for different things. So I was told that each tapping point is associated with a different meridian and a different functionality. Sometimes they can also be associated with different emotions. There are certain parts of the body that are associated with different emotions, right? But when we're tapping into the energy highway. So that energy highway runs throughout the body everywhere. So essentially, you could be tapping about happiness and be tapping here, and it's still associated to this tapping point. So we have this tapping point here. We have the top of the head, right, where you would tap where your crown chakra is. And that's more about just you getting grounded, feeling safe. It's also the governing vessel, the central vessel that runs through all 7 primary chakras. So you're also activating that energy center as well. And then we have the start of the brow, which can be on either side. And you would be tapping here. Then we have the side of the eye, the ocular bone is where we'd be tapping, not on the temple, because you can actually overstimulate yourself by tapping there. You would tap here. You would trace that underneath to underneath the eye, and you would tap here. Then you would tap underneath the nose and above the top lip, and you would tap here. And then you would tap in the chin, and you would tap in that crease here. You would tap on the collarbone on either side, underneath the bone, that fleshy area, you would tap there. And then we have underneath the arm, and you would tap here. And those are the 9 main tapping points, but there are alternatives like the heart point where you could tap here. And then you have also like your wrists where you can tap here, and then some of the fingertips. But that's where it gets more intricate. That's for like the one-on-one practice.
What are some common issues or challenges that EFT tapping can help address, and how can it be used to manage mental and emotional health, particularly for entrepreneurs and creatives who often face high levels of stress?
Everything. You can tap on pretty much anything you want to, from anxiety to weight loss to depression to bringing in money and attracting money. You can use it as a manifestation technique if you wanted to as well, because ultimately all EFT is doing is allowing you to refresh your energy field, allow your energy to be connected again so you can be your fullest self. It's helping you to reveal anything that's been hidden in the body and allowing it to come to the surface. So for people who are creatives or, not so CEOs, and you guys want to have a moment where you can regulate your nervous system so you can feel safe in your body, safe in your mind, you would tap. And you could literally do that tapping routine or tap on any of the points. And it still has that same effect, which is what I love about EFT is the flexibility of it. It's not as rigid as a lot of other healing modalities where there's a specific thing for a specific place. You are allowed to make it a unique practice for yourself and really allow your intuition to not only get stronger as you're tapping, because once your nervous system starts to feel regulated, you get to really hear your intuition more, right? You're less on your instincts and your need to survive and more on your ability to thrive in life. And when you're doing that, you're able to know like, okay, this feels really good for me. This is my sweet spot. So I'm going to tap here, right? Or I'm going to tap on top of my head to help me get through this moment.
How can individuals use EFT tapping to overcome generational traumas and access their inner strength?
First and foremost, by addressing trauma to begin with. So I want to be very clear on what trauma means, because I feel like it's also like a buzzword and not a lot of people really know the true meaning of it. Trauma is just that when something has happened to you really fast and it's hard for your body to process it, so it kind of just stores it away. And then you get triggered again, right? So a trauma can be a really bad experience, like a car accident or someone you love passing away. It could also be like pregnancy, right? Or something that's meant to be joyful, or maybe receiving accolades and getting all that praise at once can also feel traumatic to the mind and body if it's coming in super fast and your nervous system is dysregulated. That's what trauma means. So when we understand trauma in that way, it makes it a lot easier, and it kind of takes away that like heaviness and stigma to the word of like, it just means that a lot happened to me really fast. And I now need to process it. And the tool that you can use to process it is EFT. So when we're talking about things that are ancestral, right? Like ancestral rage is a really big topic for a lot of Black and brown women, where you might notice this anger come up in you and you're like, this is not my anger, but I still feel it in my body. Things like epigenetics, we can feel what our ancestors have felt. It lives within us. They live within us as well. And this is not spiritually speaking, but yes, but I'm talking about like scientifically speaking, that energy is still within us. It's in our blood, right? So when you have that understanding and use EFT, it's helping you to process that feeling of like, okay, I'm going to talk about this heavy topic, right? If we were doing a one-on-one session, this is a better example. We're doing a one-on-one session and we're talking about a trauma you may have experienced. We would start talking about it. You would start telling me the story. We would be tapping on it. And as we're doing this, we're addressing the problem by speaking about it. But because you're tapping on these tapping points and you're communicating to your body's not getting triggered. It's starting to self-soothe. It's starting to regulate itself. And we would go through that process. So when you're talking about addressing things that have happened in the past with your lineage, you're able to then use this tool to talk about these heavier topics, or even to think about these heavier topics and tell the body it's okay. We're safe. We can process this really big feeling. My body is bigger than this moment. my body's bigger than this emotion. My body's designed to actually process this feeling, even though I feel overwhelmed in the moment. EFT is a really great way to keep your body in motion, keep your body moving while addressing a really heavy topic.
It also helps you stay grounded,
Yeah.
right? Because some people live in their heads. I Ayala Van Zant says this term in the book. A lot of folks are neck down dead, meaning that people are living in their brain so much that they're disconnected to the other parts of their body. I tend to ground myself through things like meditation, EFT tapping, breathing. Breathing is probably number one for me because it's
It
free
should be.
99. Girl,
Yes.
if you can't afford Pilates and you can't afford yoga, you could breathe.
Yes, you can.
So, literally, breathing helps you gain access to all the other parts of you, and it helps yoke your mind and your body into one. It's kind of like your mind is all the way up here. It's like, get right back down here. And it
Yes.
takes your mind and it unites it with your body because a lot of us are overthinkers. A lot of us analyze, but I'm a factual person. That's one thing about me is like I need facts. Like, yeah, these feelings are here, but is this the truth? Like, I
Right.
might feel like I'm not beautiful, but is that a fact? I
No.
might feel
Mhm.
like I'm lazy or I'm
Yeah.
a bum or something, but is that a fact?
Yeah.
So, I'm also a big believer in revisiting your accomplishments on like a daily basis. Like, sometimes you got to go back, maybe create a scrapbook. Sometimes you need to revisit those moments to remind you of who you are when you may have forgotten who you are. You need those moments to remind you. Like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm not that great of an entrepreneur. I'm horrible. I'll revisit some of the projects that I've done in the past and
Right. I'm like,
you're that girl. It
right.
happens. It
It
happens.
does. It does.
It happens from time to time. What role does mindfulness play in the effectiveness of EFT tapping, and how can individuals cultivate a mindful approach to their practice?
The one thing about EFT is that it's always evolving and always changing. Like every time I go to a conference, there's something new that we're changing about definitions and things like that. One of the things that I appreciated about EFT is that you don't necessarily have to be mindful to do the practice. And I know for a lot of people, that's what trips them up in like meditating, right? Of like, I just can't get my mind to be quiet or think about sitting there. That's because you're talking about the practice of being mindful. And sometimes, like you said, if someone's an overthinker, it's going to be really a very hard journey for them to get to a space of being mindful. But just by practicing the tapping points, even if your mind is racing, if you do those rounds a few times, naturally your body begins to regulate again, and you're back to that space of being centered or being grounded. So you don't have to be mindful to do EFT, but doing EFT will definitely make you a more mindful person because it's what Brittany said about bringing the mind and the body back together, strengthen that mind body connection. That is literally what EFT was designed to do. So the history to EFT is that it started off as a healing modality, a practice therapy for people who were suffering from PTSD when they were having these deep flashbacks, right? This trauma that was bringing them back to that moment. EFT was that tool that helped them come out of that trauma. Because when we are experiencing being triggered, it's like you're being pulled back in time to that moment of trauma. Like you're living in it. Your brain literally thinks that you're back there in that moment of harm or in that overwhelming feeling. EFT brings the body back forward along with the mind and saying, actually, you're in the present moment. You're not back there. You're just thinking about it. It's a thought. It's past. It's no longer here. You're no longer in danger. You are safe. And that's what's communicating to your body as you're tapping. So even if your mind is not caught up yet, it will get caught up during the practice.
For someone who's new to EFT, what are some practical tips to get started and incorporate it into their daily routine? Shameless
So
plug,
I know.
shameless plug. Download Insight Timer. It is free 99. You can get started with Lotus. But go
Yes.
ahead, but go ahead. You can answer the question now.
No, yeah. What Brittany said, shameless plug. Look, come through the Insight Timer, tap with me. You can tap with me every week if you wanted to, or check out one of my EFT tracks. I also am going to start putting EFT tracks on my podcast. So you'll be able to do that as well. If you don't want to download a new app, I get that. You can hop on to any major platforms to the podcast and you'll be able to tap along with me. I also have mini sessions for people who are like, I'm not really sure if I'm into it. You can do that on my Instagram. There's tons of like really micro sessions of EFT for you to tap into. It should be a daily practice. If it's not, it's okay. You can build up to it. It takes like 5 minutes to do. Like it doesn't take long to actually tap. It's just such a simple way for you to get started on your healing journey. Some things that I want to bring up is that if you are a highly sensitive person, some people who are creative tend to be very tapped in or like very sensitive to their own energy and others. I would suggest some alternative ways to tap. So instead of lightly tapping on the body, you could pulse where you keep your hand to the body. You can rub, which is a very soothing experience, or you can hover. And these are all great ways for you to continue adding in the practice. I tap when I'm laying down in my bed. I'll be like this, laying down my bed, not even getting up. You don't need to be sitting up proper or sitting in a certain position to make it happen. You could be walking and tapping, right? You could be laying down and tapping. Sometimes when I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I might lay on my floor, take a nice deep breath, like Brittany said, that free 99 healing modality. And then I would lean in and start tapping and just letting myself feel through it. You also don't need a script, right? These are things that I feel like sometimes with practitioners, we get really caught up on the details. But again, EFT is so flexible, so customizable. However you start is how you start. So you don't need to have a script. You could literally just be tapping in silence and doing a world of healing for yourself. And I like to call that intuitive tapping because as you're tapping in silence, you begin to hear your body communicate with you, where you either start to like remember things or you start to feel things or one of your other senses becomes activated, and that's also providing you a sense of healing and regulation, right? You can also just tap on one point. I call this your sweet spot. So quite often when I'm tapping with my community, they might say like, oh, Lo, it feels really good to be here. And I'm like, stay there. You don't have to do the other 9 points. If this feels good, your body knows what it's asking for. I'd much rather you trust your body than trust me as a practitioner. I'm there to hold the space for you, but ultimately I want you to get to the space where you feel confident enough to really trust your body and what it's communicating to you. So for me, when I get overwhelmed and I'm not in a space to do the entire 9, I'm tapping right here and I'm taking deep breaths because this automatically feels so incredibly soothing to my body. And then once I get into a space where I feel more regulated, then I'll probably do a full round of EFT. But it's super customizable. I don't want us to kind of overthink the practice. If you just randomly start tapping somewhere on your face and you're like, I just started tapping here, girl, you already are on the journey and I'm really excited for you. But I would love for you to come and join me in community or another practitioner that taps as well. Community helps so much with this practice too.
It's funny because as I was hearing you speak, it just kind of dawned on me how a lot of us already practice EFT.
Yes.
And it's, for example, I'm gonna take a pen, like how sometimes we'll do this.
You tap
Where
on the
we're
table.
trying to, like, you'll tap on the table, or you'll like randomly just tap on your hand, or more importantly, when you're nervous, you tap your feet,
Yes.
right? Or you'll tap your knee. A
Yes.
lot of us are practicing EFT without even being conscious of it because there's just something about it that soothes the body, right?
Yes.
Touching yourself,
Yes.
helping you, reminding yourself that you're here in this body in this moment. It kind of gets you out of your head. Do you have any success stories or feedback from individuals who've experienced significant transformations through EFT tapping?
Yes. One of my one-on-one clients, at first was just doing EFT tapping for weight loss, which I was like, I can do, right? But I do feel like when she was telling me that, I'm like, I don't think that's the real concern here, but let's just do it because that's what you want to do. We'll tap into that. By the time we were done with our tapping sessions, and again, EFT is transformative. It only took her like 4 tapping sessions to have this type of transformation. It doesn't have to be this like this ongoing thing. It should be because it's really easy and it's free to do, but it doesn't have to be. So when we were tapping, we eventually realized through tapping that the reason why she was carrying the weight that she felt like she couldn't let go of is because it was emotional. It was her safety net. And we were able to then navigate healing some really deep childhood wounds. And now she's in a space where she's lost that weight, but also she just feels so much more confident and more in her body. And it allowed her to move across the country. She's like doing all these amazing things every day. I talk to her, I'm like, girl, what's going on? She just feels so much more safer in her body. And that is something that I hear a lot of Black women, that they just don't feel safe in our environment, rightfully so, right? Given the world that we're living in today, we're constantly being told that we are not enough, or that, we're not liked for our physical appearances, or these weird things that people try to attach to us. And it can make you feel unsafe in this world. You can go out in the world and be like, I feel like nobody really cares for me. And when you begin using EFT, you realize that that feeling of safety starts within, first and foremost, feeling safe in your mind, feeling safe in your body,
Yeah.
feeling safe in your spirit. And then when you go out into the world, it changes how the world responds to you. And that's more of like an energetic thing, right? Where like if your aura is strong, and our aura goes 6 feet out in front of us, side of us, above and below us. It's that thing that when you're walking down the street and you usually go a certain way, you're like, no, I don't want to go that way. And you change directions. It's because your aura went ahead and was like, something over there is not vibing with us. Let's change direction. There's a science to this, right? And when we tap into that, it allows us to feel safer in the world, and we're able to show up and create more and give more and just be more of who we are in any space that we're in. We're no longer feeling shy or timid or feeling like someone can knock us off balance. We're feeling really centered in who we are. And I feel like that's probably the most common success story from my clients, is that they're showing up in their fields, they're sharing their gifts with more confidence, and they're not over analyzing the process in their mind. And more importantly, they're trusting the wisdom in their body. I feel like that's been like the biggest and most consistent success story from my one-on-ones and from my groups.
When you're able to trust yourself, it makes it easy to trust other people, and more than anything, to trust God and to trust the universe.
It does, it does, it
You
does.
know? Now, lastly, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs, creatives, and founders on maintaining mental and emotional well being while navigating the demands of their careers?
I'm going to share two things. So I would say I'm not really great at giving advice, but I'll give insight. So the first insight is to study yourself. One of my mentors taught me that in her culture, the word disciple and discipline means to study the self, to study self. And that's very important on your journey for your mental well-being, for your physical well-being, and for your creative health as well, right? Like if you're not mentally and physically well, you cannot sustain your creative journey. It will eventually burn out at some point in time. Make sure that you study yourself and also understand that you are constantly evolving and experiencing new things about yourself. Do check-ins, see how you are today, see how you are tomorrow, see how you are every week, because you'll be able to then trust yourself more and prioritize that well-being. But study yourself. I really appreciate that I really know myself. And when I learn new things about myself, it doesn't feel completely shocking to me. It's like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like I can put two and two together, and that allows me to feel confident when I'm moving around in the world. The second thing is something that I've been putting into practice over this past year for me, and that is putting your personal before your professional. So as a professional, I'm very dedicated to my craft. I'm always studying, I'm always teaching, I'm always holding space for a student or whatever I can do, because I really do love what I get to do in this world. However, I realize that that still can make me focus on so many other people and almost forget myself, because I'm like, no, I'm not forgetting myself. It's my profession, it's my passion. But I started to look at it as in, what does Lotus need first? Let's put Lotus self first, unapologetically, focus on her personally, because what I know to be true for me, and I can pretty much stand on a soapbox and say this for like all Black women in particular, is that when we take really good care of ourselves and we're in a space of overflow, everyone benefits. We naturally care for other people because we live in this intersectionality of things like racism and sexism, right? Where we have to be hyper vigilant about our race and also about the gender we identify with, and making sure people feel safe around us, because we are quite often seen as either inadequate but also a threat. That makes us hyper vigilant all the time. And that means that we're always focusing on how other people feel around us and how they're going to perceive us. But when we recenter on our personal, we focus on being self first and allowing ourselves to come from a space of overflow, as opposed to giving all that out first and depleting our cup, we get to show up and do so much more without exhausting ourselves, without experiencing burnout, without having the need to experience things like guilt or shame, because we know that we're giving our very best. Me at overflow can do so much more than me giving you my 50% of like, okay, but Brittany really needs me, you know, like I'm gonna give her my 50%. Over time, you realize that that's not sustainable. And it's also a disservice to your loved ones. It's also a disservice to your community because they're not actually getting the best of you, right? Your 100% is going to change from day to day. What I can do today is going to vary tomorrow. It's still my 100%, right? Because every day I am a new version of myself. And giving yourself that grace is going to do wonders for you in your professional life, but more importantly, in your personal life, because you are here to live out this experience as a human being first. It just happens to be that you have these gifts and talents that are going to help other people.
That was so beautiful and so eloquently put.
Thanks, Brittany.
Lotus, thank you so much. Do you mind sharing what you're working on? Please let us know how we can support you on your endeavors.
Yes. Okay. So first and foremost, I have my Patreon membership, which I'm so proud of. It's called The Garden, and it is a safe place for you to come and learn more about EFT, learn more about neuroscience and how the brain works with the body so that you can feel safer in your experiences. It's a beautiful, beautiful community of people from all over the world coming together. We do more in-depth tapping. We'll have like coaching sessions. There's exclusive audios there for members as well, where they get specialized meditation and EFT sessions to help them with different things. But more importantly, you have this intimate community where everyone that's showing up there is intentional about their healing and being mindful in the healing of other people. So I'm really proud of that space so much. So yeah, definitely check that out. I also have my podcast Lotus Light coming out. Shout out Brittany for the rebrand because again, being around genius people, top,
All
top,
I did was help with the name. I
sure.
can't I
Yeah.
can't take credit for anything else. It may be just strategy and
Brittany
positioning.
is that friend, and she said it yesterday, because we saw each other. She is that friend that is going to almost like look you in your face and be like, babe, you're that fucking girl. Oh, excuse me, I don't know if I can curse, but you're
Yeah,
that
you can,
girl.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, you're that girl. Get it done. And it's not in this way where you feel like, oh my God, like someone's like making me do something I don't want to do. You all of a sudden like, right, Brittany, like yeah, you know what? I'm gonna get it. And then you let her know you got it done. And she was like, see, that's my girl. And it's just this feeling of anyway, that's just me ranting about Brittany because I love, love, love this woman.
I love
But
you
I
too.
literally just but yeah, Lotus Like is my podcast. It was a rebrand, but now we're focusing in on healing modalities, on how you can use things like neuroscience and EFT and guided meditations to navigate your life. The theme of this upcoming season is starting over. So I'll be talking about starting over in your 30s, different tools you can use for your healing modalities, starting over in body image, starting over in relationships with friends, with your career, and have some really fun special guests that are going to help give a unique perspective to starting over because I feel like everyone's in that space of transformation right now, and we could all use a little bit more insight on that. So those are the two main things that I have going on, but you can always follow me on Insight Timer, on Instagram, pretty much any platform at Lotus La Loba. And I'm always posting and sharing things that inspire me or things that I'm using that are helping me to navigate my life and keep my nervous system regulated.
Lotus, thank you so much. Thank you to you. And thank you to all our listeners who are tuning in, our Not So CEO gang, gang, gang. Thank you for dropping all of these gems. I am going to continue using EFT as part of my wellness journey and my experience. And I hope to those listening out there, you dive into EFT, learn a little bit more about it. Maybe you'll try it out. Maybe you'll go on Insight Timer and listen to Lotus's EFT meditations. Regardless, I think it's really important for us to explore and find different type of modalities. If you are the type of person who can't sit down by yourself and just breathe, then maybe you need to try something like EFT where there's a combination of affirmations and tapping in order to yoke your mind, body, and spirit as one. Lotus, thank you so much again. Thank you to those tuning in. Until next time, bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Not So CEO Talk Show. If you love what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. To stay in the loop, stack our newsletter, The Paper, and follow us on social media at Not So CEO. In case you need assistance with building your brand or you're a creative wanting to go from freelancer to founder, book an office hour session with me on our website at notsoceo.co. Until next time, remember, being self-made shouldn't compromise self-care. This is Not So CEO, signing off.